Okay, I'm going to redo this video. I was arguing with this Christian guy, this Catholic guy, which is it doesn't really matter because Protestants have the same view, and I've heard the same thing from Protestants. It's not Catholic. He may think it's Catholic, but and it's probably, I mean, it depends what you mean by Catholic. You mean the original Christians, sure, but many Protestants believe in the same thing. Basically, what he believes is that people do not sin in heaven because God will erase the tendency to sin. Okay, now keep in mind that this person believes that the devil had free will to sin in heaven. So he had to have the tendency to sin in heaven. Okay, it's clearly, now when you make the claim that God's going to erase the tendency to sin in the next version of heaven, you don't have the free will that is defined as a Catholic. He says that the free will is the tendency to sin, the tendency not to sin. The devil sinned because he had a tendency to sin, and that's how it had to be, because that's the only way he would have free will. So you can't come around and say that, well, God's going to erase the tendency for you to sin and then tell me that you have free will in heaven. It's fundamentally impossible. It's fundamentally illogical. There's no debate about it. There's nothing confusing about it. That's whether you like it or not, that's how it is. So let's look. So I'm going to give him this answer. A tendency to sin is a free will to disobey God, correct? If this is correct, there is no fundamental free will in heaven for the saved. In order to have absolute free will, you must have the tendency not to sin equally with the tendency to sin. The devil had both when he was the first supernatural being to sin. And that's what I'm going to put in. The devil had both of these things when he had the supernatural tendency to reject God. If he only had the tendency not to sin, he would be in heaven. Okay, so I hope this video clears it up. There's no other way. This is absolutely fact. There's no other way to spin it. There's nothing logically. There's nothing confusing about it. Okay. Now, you look at this guy and you think that he would agree with you, but he just gets more confused. He's like, this is so obvious. Listen to him. He says, you're so confused about Catholicism, which is basically Orthodox Christianity. It's not just Catholicism. Protestants say the same thing. I don't know where to begin. Everyone has free will. Otherwise, we'd just be spiritual puppets. Right. And to define free will. Free will is a tendency. The definition of free will is a tendency, the power to obey God and the power not to obey God. That's free will. It's not just the power to obey God. So for those who reject God, except from invincible ignorance, they have to have somewhere to exist after death. Otherwise, they'd be annihilated. They can't go to heaven where people willingly love God for eternity. So there is a hell, which was first created for the fallen angels. All of Catholicism makes perfect sense. You're just not thinking it through. Are you serious? Really? I wonder if Frank Voris was the one who wrote me this. Really? Okay. Now, I just wanted to, so remember, I made all these claims, and this is his conclusion. So we're gonna make it clear for him. A tendency to sin is part of the free will. It's a component of the free will to disobey God. Correct? It's a component of free will. A tendency, you have to have the tendency to sin and the tendency not to sin. You have to have both components. The tendency to sin indicates one component of free will. The tendency not to sin indicates the other part of free will. You have to have the equal capability to sin or not to sin to have free will in heaven. That's the bottom line. There's nothing a Orthodox Catholic can say or do about it. That's how it is. It's nothing. We're not trying to destroy your ideology. We're not confused. That's the facts. I mean, we can't. That's just the way it is. So I'm gonna write this. I'm gonna put this down, and I'm gonna keep talking. I'm gonna type this for him. A tendency to sin is a component of free will. Of free will. Actually, we're gonna change it. We're gonna change the paragraph. Free will. Maybe we have a semantical perception or a semantical disagreement on free will. Free will. I think we're confused on the definition. I think we are we have a fundamental disagreement on what free will is. What free will is fundamentally. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna say. I think we have a fundamental disagreement on what free will is fundamentally. In my view, free will is construed by Catholicism. All right, Christianity, as the power to obey or disobey God. Your very own words say that you will not have the power to disobey God. Your very own statement says that you will not have the power to disobey God. Disobey God in heaven if you are saved. So her very own statement, his very own statement says that you will not have the power to disobey God in heaven if you are saved. Okay, simple as that. There's no debate. Sin means disobeying God. Equals disobeying God. Therefore, you do not have free will in heaven. The saved do not have free will in heaven. There's no confusion. There is no confusion. None. There's no confusion. Sorry, that sound. That's the equally. Equal power. Actually, I would say you should by as a power to equally obey or disobey God. But I'm not going to do that. I think that's all I need to say on this. The bottom line is this: based on their own statements, you cannot have free will. There's not a trick. There's no trick into this. Look at their statements. If you cleanse the sin. Sure, so what if you cleanse the sin? Okay, the thing is, do you have the ability to disobey God in heaven? Now, clearly, the Seventh-day Adventists, I think, and Jehovah's Witnesses, clearly on the right side of interpreting the scripture this way. I believe all the scripture is fiction, but clearly they're on the right side. It doesn't matter if you're the first faith, you were the very first faith, and you came up with these doctrines. The bottom line is you're wrong. That's not what it says. That's not what you're indicating by your very own words. There's no other way to induce that. You can't sit there and say you cleanse sin and then tell me that you'll never sin in heaven anymore. How do you know that? Okay, you don't. I mean, based on the free will world, you don't know, because if you're going to tell me that you're never going to sin, then I have to highly suspect the free will that you're talking about. All right. Have a nice day.